part of this family and doing the work and being reminded of what Fawn Weaver had to say. Remember what Fawn Weaver said in that commentary. Number one, we are the majority. Number two, we come from good stock. We descended from those who survived the unthinkable. And number three, we are our only limitations. Welcome to the YouTube audience. Welcome on in. We got a lot to get to today. Before we welcome in Mayor Ras Baraka from the great city of Newark, New Jersey, who will be with us in just a bit to talk about his experiences last week where he was arrested. Some might say manhandled very aggressively, he and the other elected officials who were there in the city of Newark to provide oversight for the detention setting that ICE is using that has not been approved, for which they had no authority to open. And so we're looking forward to welcoming him in. But I want to get to some of the other news that's taking place today because, child, baby, the white South Africans are here. Let's talk about it. I don't have an accent for white South Africans. It's probably just going to be white British fake voice, but just go with me because as you may recall, Donald J. Trump has been very concerned about the whites in South Africa because elongated muskrat, who himself is a white, who was South African roots. And remember, his family wasn't necessarily from South Africa. His mama's family moved from Canada where they was racist as white Canadians. And they moved into South Africa because they felt South Africa was going to be more racist. They loved the apartheid of South Africa. Mama's family moved to South Africa to join in with the Afrikaners, with the whites who were not native to that land. And so what we have to be clear about is that now that Donald Trump is so concerned about the white Afrikaners who are colonizing racist land thieves, he has now provided entry for them to come into this country, even though he has cut off refugee status for just about everybody else with melanin. I want y'all to take a listen to this clip. YouTube, you guys should be able to hear this as well. Amina, will they be able to hear it too? Oh, they probably won't be able to hear it. Or let's skip the clip for right now. Right, because I chose not to. Yeah, Amina was just literally telling me at the beginning of the show I needed to join a different way, and I didn't do it. So now y'all won't be able to hear it YouTube. I'm going to hold on to the clip because I want to make sure I can get this in. Basically, white South Africans who come from a racist perspective, an apartheid perspective, have been trained, indoctrinated, socialized to believe that not only are they the most valuable people on the planet, but that they deserve all the things. And this is a history that is very similar to what we experienced here in these United States. But I'm going to break it down for you a little bit because this first 60 ain't going to be the last 60. They are literally paving the way for the most racist of Europeans to come into America because they want America to be white manistan. But let's talk about this history a little bit because we're going to find a lot of resonance with what white South Africans did in South Africa as compared to what their white neighbors did here in these United States. So the history of colonial land dispossession, which is the effort from colonial powers to basically come into South Africa, really the entire continent of Africa, and just take shit. Like how Donald Trump wants to take Greenland and wants to take the Panama Canal. Like they just see it and they take it and they want it because that's what colonizers do. And so this effort really goes back to the 1800s, where the Europeans, going back into the Dutch, when they came into South Africa and were trying to colonize. This is way after Shaka Zulu, sort of, not, I shouldn't say way after, but I'm trying to give a whole lot of African history in a very short period of time. And I don't even know all the history that I need to in order to explain this. So we all got to read more. We have to learn more. But basically, the European powers, when they came into South Africa, first they got their asses handed to them, but eventually they were able to colonize that territory. And when you're looking at how Europeans were able to come in and just completely dispossess Black people from their native lands, it's very similar again to what the Europeans did to the Native Americans here. In the late 1800s, land and livestock dispossession, that the Europeans were basically, as they were coming in and taking up land, taking up livestock, it created all of these wars between the native communities. And it was exacerbating some of the pre-existing tensions that already existed there, which is not really new because we saw Europeans do that both in the continent of Africa. When you look at a film like Hotel Rwanda or Sometime in April, these are films that look at what the Belgians did in Rwanda. And you can see just in one example how the Belgians would come in, or the Dutch or the British or the Germans or the French. They would come in and basically observe small differences and distinctions between the groups that were there, divide and conquer. That's all it was. And so these early efforts at dispossessing people from their land and their livestock basically exacerbated wars between, I'm gonna mess up the name of these groups, y'all, just work with me. I got a colonized tongue. I'm a Black American woman. It is what it is. The Khoi, the San, the Kosa, and I know I put that thing in the wrong spot, but it's like Kosa, the Zulu, the Soto. It's a clicking that they do. We do it too, like when we do like that, but they do it slightly differently because, we are the same, but we're different. Basically, all these ethnic groups were then pit against each other so that they were not going to be effectively able to resist against whiteness. By the time we get to 1913, where some amazing things happened in this country, but some awful things were happening in South Africa, there was this Land Act of 1913 that was enacted, and South Africa was basically moving in a direction of spatial segregation and land dispossession. What that basically meant was they passed this piece of legislation that was like, we see it, we want it. So you know how here in the United States, they passed this law called the Homestead Act? And based on the Homestead Acts, there was actually a couple of them. But with the Homestead Acts, white people were basically told, listen, there used to be a whole lot of Native American. I mean, we're not even going to call them Native American. We're going to call them Indians. There used to be a whole lot of Indians who used to live on this land, but we just killed them, scalped them, and removed all of them. And so now all this land is free. So we're going to need you guys to go out to the West. You can claim your 5 acres or however many acres you can successfully farm. And if you can successfully farm and produce a crop from now and for the next 3 to 5 years, you'll be able to hold the land forever. Whatever you build on the land will be yours, and you can pass it down to your families always. You know who did not get access to that? Black people. You know who also ain't get access to that? The indigenous people who y'all just took the land from. But that's literally what they were doing in South Africa. It's the same thing that they were doing here. So at the end of the South African War, the British and the Afrikaners. Now, Afrikaners is just a cute little twist on the word Afrikaan. It's white people. It's racist white people. It's racist white colonizing white people. The British and the Afrikaners, after the end of the South African War, began working on establishing the Union of South Africa, which was finished by 1910. But Black people were excluded. Not only have Black people been kicked off of their land, not only have they been dispossessed of their livestock, they also were dispossessed of the right to vote. How interestingly curious does it seem that the Americans in this country, the South Africans in South Africa, and the Germans and Nazis all seem to use the exact same playbook? That, my friends, is intentional because they're all racist. They're racist. And racists have a playbook. It might be called Project 2025 this week, but it's the same basic playbook: dispossession, dismantle governments, and ensure that there is no equity or equality. So, but white people were still upset. They were still very upset because even though they had taken all of this land from Black people, they were like, well, we want more. We want more of the land. We don't think any of the Blacks should have any of the land because we want the land. And we want the land because we're white. And white Jesus in our line and our mind told us that we could have it. Couldn't we? Now, I don't know what accent that's from. It just seems white and European to me. So I think we're just going to go with that. Okay. One of the major steps, according to this report, and this report, you can find the title of this report is called the Natives Land Act of 1913. And this is in southafricanhistory.org, sahistory.org. You can find it. Phenomenal information, lots of good data. But what they talk about is the fact that the whites weren't satisfied. It was like, give me some more. And they wanted to take everything. And they basically did that. One of the major steps of the Land Acts of 1913 was basically they took all the African people. And it was like, you could have this plot of land right here. They gave them 7% of the land. They gave them 7%, not 70, not 17, not 7% of the land. The whites took 93% of the land. They took all the rest of it and put all the African people, the Xhosa, the all the names I messed up and could not mention. And they put them on 7% of the land, kind of like taking all the Native Americans and that were left that you hadn't genocided yet and putting them on reservations. And that's one of the reasons why we have extreme poverty and levels of disruption economically that we see in South Africa today. But the white South Africans are now upset because the Black South Africans are like, yeah, we're done with this. We're not doing this anymore with you. We tried it. We're pretty much through. We're not doing this with y'all no more. And so basically what that means is now the white people who are a couple of generations removed from the 1913 Native Land Act are like, well, what do you mean you're going to take our land? We stole it fair and square. We've been colonizing it all this time. Nowhere else have the colonizers have to get their land back. Why do we? We don't want to give it back, Harry Potter. I don't know what Harry Potter has to do with this, but it felt like a British name. And so I just injected it. I think he just caught a stray. I think Harry Potter was a good one. I wasn't really into the series. I don't know. But the point is, these are some racist people, and now they're here. Now they're here. They're here with the right to refugees, which means they're going to get access to all the programs and the resources that the whites typically don't want to see anybody Black or brown actually benefit from. They're here now. And there's going to be a policy of welcoming even more of them here. But here's the thing about white South Africans. You thought you had problems in South Africa. You about to run into the American capitalistic system, which means that instead of having hired help, which you could pay, I saw some people say that they pay their maids $15 a day. $15 a day. White South Africans, those of you who ain't gainfully employed, you're going to be the new hired help. You're gonna be working at Mar-a-Lago because they want it to be lily white and lily pure anyway. You're not going to be able to maintain the elevated status of living that you were able to accomplish in South Africa because here in America, shit is expensive. You know why else shit is expensive? Because y'all's president decided to implement 145% tariffs on China. And now what do we see? We get announced over the weekend. This is today's Financial Times. Trump tariffs hasten China's push to cut foreign parts from supply chains. Now, everybody today is paying attention to the fact that over the weekend, Scott Bessent finally got his ass together. He's the Secretary of the Treasury, and him and his counterpart in China was like, listen, we're going to come together. We're going to figure some things out. We got 145% tariffs on you. Y'all got 125% tariffs on us. Let's figure some things out because this don't make no sense, which we knew it didn't make no sense. That's why we told y'all this was a stupid policy, which is why we told y'all don't vote for this man whose only economic policy was tariffs. The reality we're in right now, however, is that there is a pause. Right? They're lowering the temperature. They're saying, oh, perhaps Donald Trump on Friday was like, we're going to lower the tariffs to 80%. But today it was like 30%. And I'm old enough to remember that Donald Trump said the tariffs was necessary because that's how he was going to bring back manufacturing. I'm old enough to remember that Donald Trump said the tariffs was necessary because that's how he was going to bring back jobs to America. But now the tariffs ain't necessary no more because you know why? They were never going to bring back manufacturing and jobs in America. But what has happened, even though we are in this pause and everyone's going to be talking about the pause and how great the pause is, remember the squirrel philosophy. We don't just watch the squirrels. We watch the trees that the squirrels are running in between. We see the big forest for the trees. We don't just pay attention to one tree. And this tariff pause situation is a squirrel. Because now, not to say that they may not come to a deal with the tariffs, and I definitely hope they do because I can't keep stocking my freezers. But the challenge that we have now is that in between the time of Liberation Day of April 2nd, and really going back a few years before, China has been preparing for Trump 2.0. And according to the Financial Times, China now believes that they can now survive without anything from the US or the West. So basically, all this time of Liberation Day and the first 100 days, and as you get a tariff and you get a tariff and you get, what it did was it accelerated their already predisposed efforts at decoupling from the United States of America and the West. What this 100 days and Liberation Day gave to the Chinese was the final push to basically clear their supply chains of any reliance on American products or Western made products. And this basically gave them the time that they needed to almost close the circle on that. According to the report, yes, they believe China can now survive without anything from the US or the West. And it has given the country, this whole tariff foolishness has given the country the strength to resist Trump's trade demands. So watch this space. Watch Scott Bessent, watch these negotiations between China and the Americans, because right now, while the Americans are spinning their wheels, trying to bend over backwards, they're caving left, right, and center because this was never going to be a plan that works. I didn't come up with that genius notion. Every economist worth their salt, except Howard Lutnick, and he's not an economist, but came up with that reality because tariffs ain't new. They did this during the Great Depression. That's what exacerbated the Great Depression with the Smoot-Hawley Act, which we have discussed at length. But right now, they're talking about all these discussions that they're having, and at the same time, China has moved to completely alleviate its reliance on anything needed from America. It's sad. It's sad that the Americans have to find these things out as stupidly as we do, but here we are. That's what it is. One last bit of news before we get ready to transition into our next guest. Last bit of news. There was a report that the United States Copyright Office had been working on for a couple of years now. This was a report that basically was looking at generative AI and the concerns with generative AI that it copies, right? Remember when, not NVIDIA, what was the name? Deepseek. Remember when Deepseek, the Chinese AI company, like a couple weeks ago, was like, oh, you guys need to raise billions and billions of dollars for your data centers for your AI to work? Couldn't be us in China, because in China with $10 million, we were able to do in Deepseek what y'all been trying to raise a whole lot of money for, and you ain't even got no capacity to spend to raise the money properly. And we were able to do what you say you need billions for like a fraction. Remember when that happened? That was just a couple of weeks ago. Just a couple of weeks ago. Well, one of the things that people in America were very concerned about and angry about was that Deepseek, basically, they said it copied, right? And then innovators here and copyright and content creators here were like, oh, AI, you're mad that somebody copied and looked at your materials and didn't give you credit for it? Well, the Copyright Office yesterday finished a report, or this over the weekend, finished a report that they have been working on for 2.5 years. They concluded that generative AI that was trained on copyright works was not fair use, which means everybody whose shit was stolen by AI to basically copy, and do whatever they wanted to do to be able to like take in that information. Because remember, artificial intelligence needs data. It needs to consume data so that it can train. And they were training the AI models here in this country on copywritten works. And they were saying, well, it's fair use. It's fair use. Now, if something is fair use, basically, you don't have to worry about licensing in the same way. You're not going to have to worry about paying for the licensing fees in the same way, because fair use, like the reason I can read y'all an article from New York Times is because it's newsworthy, right? That's not quite fair use, but I'm trying to give you like some complicated legal analysis in a very uncomplicated way. Basically, the Copyright Office was like, nah, son, y'all cheated. Y'all was infringing on copyrights. And as a result, you're going to have to pay these content creators for all the shit that you stole to basically feed your AI models. And so that was a report been working on for 2 years. 2 years. The report comes out, was it yesterday, day before yesterday? Bam, the head of the Copyright Office is fired today. Donald Trump has illegally fired the head of the Copyright Office because he did not apparently like the fact that the Copyright Office basically issued a ruling that's going to be a blow against AI. And so, yeah, this is where we're at right now. This is where we're at. Unfortunately, I wish I had better news to tell you, but they are going to see this pause in the tariffs as best as they possibly can. And I say spin, baby, spin. Give the American manufacturers some time to figure out what they're going to do next, because even at their current levels, the tariffs are exorbitantly high. Even with the pause, that 10% tariff, remember they talked about this deal that they made with the UK last week, and I told y'all at 10%, that's 3 times what the tariffs used to be for Britain. So I don't know what the deal here was. Yeah, it's the same thing. So let's pray that cooler heads prevail. But let's also be clear that while these folks are talking, how much do you think China can accomplish in the next 90 days? How much do you think they can accomplish to fully rid themselves of any reliance or dependencies on America? I don't know about you, but I'm seeing lessons that Black people should be taking from all of this. We should be learning. We need to be connecting with our African brothers and sisters, the Pan-African diaspora, because, child, the world reorder is reordering. And we want to make sure that we are paying attention so we are not caught up in it. We got to go to commercial break. Much more to come. YouTube, thank you guys so much. I appreciate y'all. Much more to come on the Lurie Daniel Favors Show. We'll be right back after this. Hold on, YouTube. Let me see. Hi, YouTube. Okay, I'm sneaking in here. We on commercial break on Urban View. I mean, we on commercial break, right? We good? Okay, we on commercial break. All right, I'm just checking the chat. Hi, everybody. How y'all doing? Happy Mother's Day. I hope y'all had a good Mother's Day weekend. And for those of you who do not either have a good relationship with your mother, I pray that you had a weekend of rest and peace. For those of you who are in loss, who are mourning your mama, I just pray that you are able to be comforted. And to everybody who gives out that mama energy, we appreciate y'all. So yeah, let's see. I'm just scanning the chat, make sure I didn't miss anything I need to ban. Oh, thank you, TMFJ. Always appreciate you. And I'm just making sure there wasn't no trolling situation, because y'all know I can't be paying attention to the chat while I'm giving the news, because I'm reading the articles and getting the information. But thank y'all. I appreciate y'all. We're going to have a live next weekend, or this coming weekend rather. I'll have more details about that in the days to come. But right now I got to go because we're about to come back from a commercial break. I love y'all. Bye. Gotta go.